Hi, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm chatting with McKinzee Crow, who is an Air Force spouse, a young Air Force spouse. She's also a business program manager and just started her own website. So let's just go ahead and get started and chatting with McKinzee and learn all the things. Hi, McKinzee. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great. And I love your enthusiasm. Like we were just chatting about all the things about how they met and about how she's finding this new Air Force life. And we were talking about past assignments. And I was just giving her some tips about, being stationed overseas. And I think that's been the most fun of meeting all these military spouses is getting to hear your stories and, just chatting. And it's been great. And I think for people who have not read your highlight, could you talk a little bit about your career trajectory and then like what it was like once you got, because you're newly married, you're 2 years, right?
Just
So,
Wednesday, actually. So,
oh my gosh, and your
yeah.
husband's from home, so I love that. So, I mean, I think a lot of us have forgotten what that was like, that first,
Mhm.
job after marrying into the military. So,
Yeah.
can you give us a little bit of a peek into your life and how that transition from like, just being on your own and then being a military spouse, how that worked out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right after we graduated college, I instantly went on to get my master's in operational management while working full time. And I was able to keep my job once we moved down to Panama City. But last year, last November, actually, I got laid off due to not being able to come back into office. And so I was the first to be let go on my team because of that. And so the last year has been me navigating to find my new role. And I finally found it, and I have great mentors to help me support that. But it hasn't been easy. And I've learned a lot about different resources and different things that military spouses can do to increase because I've always been one of those people who have wanted a career, and I'm a businesswoman at heart. I'm huge into the tech world, and so I never wanted to not work, and that's just maybe just how I feel, but I've always wanted to have a career as well. I don't want to feel like I have to choose between loving my husband and his career and my career as well. I want it to be all in one equal.
No, I mean that's the basis of NMSN, right? Because we fully feel that if a
Yeah,
military spouse wants to work, they should be able to work. So I
exactly.
love that. And you just briefly mentioned the role that mentors play in your current role. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Because I know military spouses are, they're awakening to the notion of having mentors and sponsors, but it can be really hard to find those people, right? So tell us a little bit about your experience with mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my mentors, I actually got to know personally before she PCS'd, and she's been able to help me navigate in the company that I am in now,
Good.
as well as meeting different mentors along the way. Some being other military spouses that I've made connections with on base, or in the corporate world. I really leverage LinkedIn as much as I can to try to find a great mentor in my career path as well.
No, so I love that you also mentioned that you connected to some of these spouses on base because I
Mhm.
think a lot of people, I think because so many people do not live on an installation that people are starting to not think of um, in-person brick and mortar resources as something that they
Exactly.
can avail themselves of. And so I love that you said these are people you connected with on base. And how did that occur? Like through living in base housing or spouse clubs or?
Yeah, so right when we got here, we did not live on the installation. We lived in an apartment because we were only slated to be here for about 9 months initially.
Right.
And so I just started meeting spouses. I, helped out with the key support liaison part aspect of our squadron, as well as the booster club for the whole entire squadron. And I really kind of took a look right, a month married, I like got here and I looked into it, and I felt like there's a generational gap between younger military spouses and older. And it's just because we have different views. The older military spouses tend to not get careers later on until later on in life, whereas we want to wait to have children and, progress in our own career path. And so I'm trying to connect that. I'm trying to like build that gap because I noticed a lot of younger military spouses like myself were having issues connecting with older military spouses. And so I've been trying to build that. But honestly, I took it as a new adventure. So kind of funny, like fun fact. I transferred colleges mid COVID because I didn't want to live where I lived anymore. I had grew up there, couldn't live there anymore, transferred to a state I had never been to. Knew nobody. So I'm always up for a new adventure. And so I kind of just learned on my own between leveraging the base Facebook pages for spouses and also the military family readiness center that we have here is amazing. And so that's how I was able to talk to people about employment or other spouse opportunities on base.
I love that. I love hearing from a younger spouse that you guys are still using those brick and mortar
Mhm.
resources because I mean, honestly, like when I was coming up, that's what we had, right? We didn't have
Yeah.
Facebook and all that, and that's what we had, and they're still invaluable resources. And I think people forget about how many free resources we have available through the installation resources. Like I think
Absolutely.
they do tests for you, they do personality tests, they do like the uh Myers-Briggs for you, or
Mhm.
and they're all for free.
Yeah.
And so rather than paying for things, you're exactly right in that, go look at the free resources you have available to you on the installation first. You're brilliant.
Absolutely.
So you were talking about, the way the mentorship of other spouses helped you find success in your job search, because you were saying that you had applied to so many jobs to
Mhm.
no avail until you really started networking, and then that was the key to your success, which is music to my ears. So what can other military spouses do to increase their odds of success?
Yeah, I think utilize as many resources as you can. And that's something I highlight on my blog is, all the different resources that come free to military spouses. Like I didn't know that you could get Coursera for free and you could upskill as much as possible. And now LinkedIn Premium is free for
Right.
military spouses. And so I really try to leverage LinkedIn as a platform to build my network for people in my similar career field, because women in tech are also, not very strong yet, and so we're building that up. And so, connecting with as many women and men in the tech industry who are willing to help a younger, just starting out IT professional is very beneficial. I would say too, I honestly I went to the career center and I started, going to different networking events, and volunteering. And that's how I met my mentor from here personally. And I knew she was in the tech world and I said, hey, I think we should be friends. And we started talking and then we started having, Teams calls because she lived off the installation. And so
Right.
it really was beneficial.
No, I love that. And don't forget the associations, because I think that's something that people forget. And
Mhm.
I know that at least in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, associations are huge, and they're the ones that have the really big networking events.
Absolutely.
Because, I don't think I knew until I moved here that 5% of jobs are never posted, that
Mhm.
they fill them like through associations or other trusted networks. So did not know that until my mentor taught me that. So that's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. And that's something too that you just nobody ever tells you until that one person lets you know, and then it broadens your like scope a million times better.
Yeah, and then you never forget it, right? And you
Yeah.
share, you pay it forward. But I'm just curious because I am one of those older spouses. Um, so it's been a while because my husband and I married decades ago. So as a new military spouse, are there any surprises in the lifestyle that you hadn't anticipated, whether it's just personal or like being far away from people or the ability to, like travel the world or professional? Are there any surprises with the lifestyle that you hadn't anticipated?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest surprises professionally would be the how hard it is to get a role because you're a military spouse, and
Right.
nobody ever talks about that enough. I feel like I've done research on it, and it's a bigger issue than what a lot of people make it seem to be. And most of them struggle for years and apply to so many jobs. And the second that you say, "Oh, my husband's in the military," it's not, "Oh, thank you for your contributions or whatever." It's, "Oh, okay, we'll let you know," and then you get a rejection, and it's because they see it as if you're applying for an in-person role, they see it as a liability because they'd rather take someone and train them up for longer than take a military spouse and train them up for 1 to 2 years and then have to refill that role. So they look at the other candidates that permanently live here, and so it makes it a lot harder to find those roles. And so that's been the biggest thing professionally, is just not getting a chance because you are a military spouse. You have a lot of leverage with other military spouses, but when it comes to careers, it does take a little bit longer on average. And I see that in my own experience. And the other shock was just kind of, I think it's very dependent on your spouse's roles in the military as well. Like my husband's, he right now he's TDY, and he was getting home from work while I was getting up and logging on to work. And so, that's the kind of balance that you have to really figure out, and you also have to really figure out how to communicate when those time differences and work shifts are different.
Yeah, no, so that is, I mean, that is true because I think when we got married, he was not deploying because he was bank. So he was at the closest to a 9 to 5 job that a pilot in the Air Force I was ever
Yeah.
going to have. And so when we had our son, we had the luxury of he was just 9 to 5 almost. So
Mhm.
but then we went to an operational base, and that was, you're like, okay, now he's deployed to the FOB, and like he's, in the Middle East, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
how many hours is that? And then that's in, that's when they can get, and they can't call when they want to call. I think it's better now, but it was, yeah, you're right.
Well, yeah, and
Forget about
so
that.
back to what I had said earlier, like we were only slated to be here for 9 months, and then because of how well my husband did in the course that he was going through, he got picked up as an instructor. So we got picked up for another 2 years to stay here, and so right now he's got a 9 to 5 ish job. It depends
Yeah.
on like missions and stuff. When he has to get up, he could get up at 4 and be home at 3. So it's very dependent, but we're extremely lucky to kind of build our marriage before we go into an operational base. So
I love it. And I love that you've managed to find the balance between your career and his career. I think that's huge. And I think that's what we love to hear
Mhm.
because, as spouses who've had to fight for you guys to have a better opportunity, I love that it's working. Um,
Yeah,
and if it makes you feel better, like I think those people are like steeped in outdated notions because millennials are not staying in jobs for 20 years anymore. They're moving every 2 to 3 years.
exactly.
Military spouses seem almost stable, and so like I don't know if this will help you in the future, but what a lot of spouses who've been able to overcome that have said is they've been like, I don't know how long I'll be here. I may be
Mhm.
here 3 years, but I may be here 6, 9, 12 years. You
Yeah,
don't know. And but I will guarantee that as long as I am here, I'm not looking for another job. I'm going to do the best job possible for you. Um,
absolutely.
so I don't know if that's going to help you with your next interview, but that's what a lot
That's
of us
super helpful,
said.
actually.
Yay. But you know what? I always like to give like whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to have the last word. So Mackenzie, what do you think? Any closing thoughts for everybody out there?
Yeah, I would say honestly, I know like if you're in the job field, the job market, and it's super hard, give yourself some grace because it's not the easiest thing, especially in the world that we live in today. When I was applying for my previous role, I had that it landed into my lap, and now it's been a struggle. And so you got to give yourself some grace and know that you're not the main issue. And also, talk through it with your spouse because you most of the time they go right into their career post college or right out of high school, and so they don't see the job market, and they either if they have a trouble understanding, well, you're applying to all these jobs, why aren't you getting responses?
Right.
And that's something that we've really had to work through because my husband would come home and be like, oh, what did you do today? And I said, oh, applied to jobs. And he's like, but you're not hearing anything back. And I was like, okay, we got to sit down and talk about this. And so that too is how I've kind of developed all the different resources that I've gained in the last year. And that's why I decided to make my blog to be able to showcase that. And also I feel like there's a lot of military spouse blogs, and a lot of them are very particular to one job field. And I'm trying to make it to where it's all around, not generic, but where everyone can relate to it, not just one job field or the other.
Right.
Everyone who's a military spouse can relate to that.
No, I love it. And thank you so much. And I love that the
Of course.
transition is doing well. I mean, I love that this transition into our military lifestyle is going well for you. And I'm really excited. I had an opportunity to talk to McKinsey for a little while before you guys came on. And, they're already looking forward to their next assignment. And she's one of those who's like up for an adventure and they're already thinking about going overseas. So I love that for you so much. But thank you, Mackenzie, and I look forward to staying in touch. And thank you guys for joining us today. And thank you to our friends at USAA for making these conversations possible. And I hope you'll join us again next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.